football in this area is really just inspiring. These players are underdogs and they embrace that mentality. There's a lot of cliches you hear, small town, big dreams, just small town kid trying to make it. That is very real, and that mindset kind of spills over into the entire team. So when a team from this part of the state, makes it to the state title game or makes a run, at a big opportunity like that, really the entire football community gets behind them.
Because we want everybody to know that the Tri-Cities has tough teams. I think that's a big tie in there. They want everybody in the state to know. Seattle, you got nothing on us. We're tough down here.
This SWX production is brought to you by AmeriCool Heating and Air and Jeremy Brock, your local mortgage expert.
One more kneel, and that will do it. Chiawana has beaten Kamiakin 10-7.
To me, from what I see around, because it's still the big event in town. In some areas, there's so many other things to do, and there's more here to do than there was 40 years ago when I was in high school. But there's enough people that still want to go out, and the big game is to go watch. Pasco Chiawana or Kennewick Kamiakin. So you still get that people that come out for that stuff. So it's exciting in that way, and that our community is very supportive.
High school sports are pretty big here, partly because there's not a lot to do here. High school sports have been successful, especially at Richland, and a couple other schools, Kamiakin, Chiawana. So because of their success and the culture here, there's just a lot of people that will come out to watch. So there's a lot of eyes on you. So you got to perform. There's a lot of good coaches in the area, so they expect a lot out of you. So there's just a lot of talent here, a lot of history. That's honestly my favorite part about the Tri-Cities. Every single home game, every single away game, you're going to see a lot of fans. More than fans when you go up to and play in the GSL. You're going to see a lot more fans here. So that's definitely a cool part, and you see all the old heads come to all the home games and watch you play. It's really cool to see a community like that, and I hope I can raise my kids in a community just like that. Like the amount of support I get is very, very cool. It's very, very special, and I'm very thankful to grow up in a place like this.
We're fortunate. Our coaches work very hard. We got an outstanding coaching staff, but we're also very blessed to be able to coach these kind of kids that walk through here. And truly, one of the things, the biggest thing that makes all these kids so successful and pushes these kids as hard as it does is the competition level in the Tri-Cities. So we know that we have to perform and work and do everything we need to do to keep up with those that are in our neighboring schools. I think it's the identity. You see a lot of pride in the kids that are in whatever high school you're in, but the pride of the parents and the community that follows those. You always get the phrase, once a brave, always a brave, or once a son, always a son, or once a lion, always a lion. And that holds absolutely true. And their identity is tied to those athletic programs in many instances. So if the Braves are successful, if we're playing well, then that community starts to build around that. And I think that's part of it. It's that identity piece. It's the fact that, the school colors mean so much. You talk to certain people, they're like, I'd never wear anything green. That's just not in my nature. I won't wear anything that's green because it ties to Richland, or Richland won't wear anything red, or somebody won't wear anything blue. And it's that whole concept of belonging to something bigger than yourself and tying into it and following it with that pride. And that's really what makes athletics so special.
Back in the 1950s and 60s, and even earlier than that, in the 40s, each city had one high school: Kennewick High School, Pasco High School, Richland High School. Obviously, this area has grown really large over the last 30, 40 years. Kamiakin was the first new high school to join in Kennewick, so you split Kennewick down the middle. That was in 1970, and then Hanford joined the Richland area in 1974. So Pasco was the one that was a holdout for the longest time until Chiawana came into existence about 12 years ago, I think it was. Anyway, they're going to get a new high school eventually in the next, I'd say, 5 years. And so they're going to split up into 3 areas as far as large high schools are concerned. And then, and now, of course, Southridge was added in the 90s. So, in Kennewick, and so we've got 3 high schools there. So it's just, as the community grows, and they don't want a high school over 2,000 students. And that's the problem right now with a number of these high schools. They're just so big. So the big old-time city rivalries obviously are gone that they had in the 50s and 60s, where it was like, Kennewick, we're going to crush you, no, you're not, Richland, we're going to get you, that kind of stuff. That just doesn't happen anymore. But it's because you got kids from all over the place. The interesting part is a lot of these kids at different schools, they're friends, they're buddies. Back in the 50s and 60s, I don't think that was a real true story. There was like, you don't talk to him. He plays for the other school. Now these guys play AAU ball together and basketball. They work out together. They're friends. And so when one kid gets a scholarship offer, all of his friends that on other schools, they're excited for him. So it's kind of cool to see that part. But when they get in between on the court or on the gridiron, that stuff's not, okay, we're not gonna be friends for a while here, but we'll be friends afterwards.
Same gyms, they go to the same churches, they do the same things, and outside of the school aspect, they probably went to the same elementary schools for many of these kids. And those friendships are built and developed at a young age. And we like to continue to build that through. It's funny, you talk to the kids, you say, okay, who do you have to watch out for in this school or that school? And they can tell you everything about those kids because they've known them their whole lives. And that's really what makes the Mid-Columbia Conference and the tight-knit communities that we have here so special, is that they know each other, and the respect is there because they've played alongside each other as well as against each other over time.
There's honestly, I can name a guy off every single team. So I'm cool with a lot of Kamaikan guys like Woodley Downer, Messiah Jones, Tuna. I'm friends with the guys from almost every single team. I text them all about what they're doing, where they're going to go to school, all this great stuff. So it's really cool to play against them as well. And that honestly ups the competition every year because you're friends with these guys and you don't want to lose your friends, obviously. So you're just going at them every single year, and there's a lot of talk on the field, about who's better, who's what, So it really ups the competition and makes it a really fun environment just because no one wants to lose their friends.
Different than, because for one is you didn't have the social media to be able to communicate, and and even when I began coaching, kids didn't have cell phones, so you weren't doing, I think Facebook is too old for our kids. What do they do? Twitter and Instagram and those kinds of things now, and TikToks. I know about those, but I don't do that. But that's become, which I love watching. Very frustrating at times. They can be at a game and yelling horrible things at each other and being mean and all those kinds of things. And then you can't get them off the field afterwards or the court because they want to talk about where are we going to go eat and all this kind of stuff. And, I was growing up, when I grew up, you didn't do that. You didn't ever meet with your rivals. It was like you weren't friends or anything, but they talk about, you probably heard Ben talk about friends at Kamaikan and that he enjoys playing against and doing things. And where they may go to college. Wouldn't this be neat if we went to college together? We didn't do that, 25, 30 years ago. So it's really neat to watch. It's a little confusing at times, but it's neat to watch that maybe they catch that it's more of just a game than what we think it is at times, because they can end it and it's just a game, and part of the trash talking is just part of the game and part of the yelling that they do. Because I hate to say it when, and I don't know if you've talked to Casey, but when the Kamaikan and Richland are playing, it's like, okay, what are our kids going to say to each other? What's going to be the bad things that happen? There's so many of them. And that's the worst matchup that we both deal with every year is, okay, what's going to happen? But then they're all like friends afterwards and hugging on the field. And where do you want to go get a hamburger? And it's like, what? You just said this about me. How can I do this? And they do it. So maybe that's good.
We definitely will hate each other while we're playing each other, but off the court, I'm definitely friends with a lot of those guys, and it's cool to see them do well.
Oh yeah, so it's like crazy because like we'll go to middle school with someone like our whole life, elementary school, and then like we live next to them, but somehow like the boundary splits us up. So one goes to Pasco, one goes to Chiawana, or one goes to Kennewick, one goes to Camaican. It's just like a weird, but it's also like the fun. That's what makes it fun. Like we know who we're playing, we know like their like potential, I guess, and so it just makes everything like more competitive.
They're really good friends, and we talk about football a lot.
We hang out all the time, and we always talk about college and where I should go, and he helps me. So he's been cool about that. No, he picked me off actually. He intercepted me. Like the first drive, they scored, I threw an interception, and I was just like, that's crazy. I smiled afterwards. Oh.
Yeah, I picked him off their very first drive, and then after that he wasn't too happy, so he kind of definitely went off on us. So yeah, he's a great player.
And then they were up, so then it was just comeback time. Like I was like, no, we need to like get our stuff together. Then we got it together and ended up winning.
He's got a great arm. Okay, we're still good. And just runs that offense so well. He's really good at distributing the ball. When I watched him as a freshman, he didn't look like a freshman. He didn't act like a freshman. He was out there and he was calm as could be. And you just don't see that in a large high school on a football field. You know, they're starting this freshman. Well, this is gonna be fun. We'll rattle him like crazy on defense. No, he knows that he's got his teammates are backing him up and that they will help him out, and he's very accurate and he can run. I think he had a 65-yard touchdown run last year. You guys probably have it on videotape. But I mean, I was amazed about that. I didn't realize he could run as well as he did at that time. So and of course they're going to develop a running game before he starts throwing for the most part. So and Graff always had this play, and then Scott took it over. But it's basically a power run, and the running back is about 8 or 9 yards deep, so that when he gets the ball, he just watches those two offensive linemen, create a hole, and he just figures out where he's going to go, and that's always worked for them. They don't hide it. They're like, defense, we're going to run this play, try to stop us, and so that's how it works. Steve Graff was the architect of that program when the school opened. He had been a successful football coach at Pasco High School for years. He had won, I want to say, off the top of my head, 3 state titles at Pasco High School. And when the school district, announced, okay, seniority's going to get the jobs if they want him over at Chiawana. For Steve, it was a no-brainer because it was brand new facilities, and his entire staff followed him. He would have been the first guy to tell you that if he got hit by a bus on a Monday, Friday night, they'd be ready to go because his assistant coaches do everything for him. And it's just a great staff, right? And Scott Bond, who's the new coach, has been with Steve for over 20 years. Scott was a great, candidate for that job, and he got it. The funny thing is I've known Scott since he's been about 10 years old because his father and I used to play softball together. So, I've known him for years. Great kid, great quarterback when he was at Pasco High School in 1989. Pasco High School with him at quarterback, and they had a couple other outstanding athletes. Best team in the state of Washington, never made the playoffs. Back then, only the top 2 teams in the Big 9 Conference made it. Pasco lost their first 2 games of the season and then rolled through everybody else. And they even beat Curtis, who I think was the eventual state champion that year in a non-league game with Curtis of Tacoma. So anyway, I always tell them now, you guys were the best team that never made the playoffs. I couldn't believe how good you guys were already. Yeah, I know. So thanks for reminding me again.
Good evening, I'm Jamie Council. Today we have big news from the WIAA. High school sports season 2 was supposed to start on December 28th, Bad news is it's postponed once again, but the good news is nothing is canceled. Here's a look at the updated calendar. Season 2, which is traditional winter sports like basketball, wrestling, and boys swim and dive, are now set to start on February 1st. This change pushed back the start just over a month and condenses seasons down to 7 weeks.
Well, unfortunately, I'm on my 7th draft of a football schedule, it seems like. It changes every other week, it seems. And so a lot of it is just adjusting that kind of stuff as we get going.
We are creating new schedules and giving each other, options for schedules. And okay, what if we have a 7-week schedule? What if we have a 6-week schedule? What are we going to do? And so we've already been producing these schedules in advance. So for us, we were kind of anticipating this to some degree. We just want to get our kids out there to participate as quickly as possible.
I guess my answer would be let's just be thankful we got to play whatever we get to play. And there isn't time to fit in a state championship without taking from somebody else. So how do you get satisfaction out of, right now, for example, we look at a 7-week schedule and maybe 1 week of playoffs, and it's going to only be a regional type playoff in Eastern Washington. So if that's what we get, that's more than what spring sports got last year. So let's take it and let's run with it and do what we can, So we, at some point, it's like you got to figure out what we can do.
But if you look at the competition level in the Big Nine, the MCC, and the GSL, there are a number of sports where the state champion, the true state champion, comes out of one of those 3 conferences. So what I would tell our kids is if that's the case, if we end up with that type of a format, the competition is not going to drop off. You start talking about wrestling, and some of the most dominant powerhouse wrestling programs in the entire state are sitting in Eastern Washington. Along with a variety of sports. So I think that we would still put together a phenomenal tournament for kids, and we'll, play who's in front of you and see what happens. So I really believe that most people are just going to be excited if they can get back in and compete and do those things.
I think as we plan it and we try to get ready, that people probably need to know, first off, we're trying to give everybody the opportunity to play everything they can. So there's been a lot of options that have been given out there that I don't like it when, if we put everything into 2 seasons, what if okay, Ben Fuel, are you going to play basketball? Are you going to play football? You only get to choose one. Why would we, is there a way around that we can make sure that they don't have to choose seasons? How do we do that? That's important. That's probably the number one thing when we look at making the schedule, is not having a kid have to choose right now between it. But then the idea of how do we give them the best high school opportunity in what's going to be a shortened season. So I think that's really important for us to figure out and keep that integrity.
Eastern was the very first college school I talked to, so they've always been right there in my mind. And so when they first offered me, I knew that okay, well, if this is a good school, I would gladly be able to go here. And so as the time went on and weeks, the days passed by, because they only offer a certain amount of people, and so if someone else commits, then that means you don't necessarily get it taken away, but it's not on a full scholarship. And I already knew I loved Eastern, and so I was okay, that's an easy decision. But I know it's affected some other players that haven't or aren't committed or haven't got scholarships yet, because I know that every year you're on varsity, it's an important year because you have to perform so you can get those offers of scholarships. So I know that not having a season right now will affect some other players.
So I got my junior year, which is probably my most important year personally, because I got a lot of film out of that, I got a lot of recognition out of that. So I had 9 or 10 offers before I committed, which was plenty enough. So I just hope that these kids who don't have that season will make something happen. I've been trying to help some of them out, trying to get their film sent to coaches that I've been recruited by, stuff like that. But I know there's a couple kids on my team that are juniors that really need this season and most likely won't get it. So just trying to help them as much as possible. But I am very fortunate enough to have my junior season, which is a big part of my recruitment.
I think it's a challenging because you're not seeing what these kids can do. I think one of the better things that happens, probably the worst thing I should say that happens, is those kids that have a great senior year and get picked up because of that. So they came to watch Ben Fuel, for example, but then you see another guy out there that goes like, oh, maybe we need to go look at this other guy also, that kind of thing. So it's those kids that get caught up into that may slip through the cracks now and don't get that opportunity. That's probably the biggest one I think I worry about is, they came into town to see the big names, but then also, hey, did you guys see that 270 guard, that we don't know anything about? Is he going anywhere? And he had a really great game. Maybe we can develop that or whatever that is. So I think that's probably the challenge that we run into with that one is are we missing out on some of those kids the opportunities?
Exactly, and we don't even know who those kids are.
Exactly, because we're not seeing them yet.
Yeah, somebody was saying how Bridger Feldman, that he didn't do much until his senior year, and then went to Central Washington because of what he did his senior year.
Well, and seeing, being around it is some high school boys don't grow until their senior year or even after their senior year. So what is that? It's just different with the guys, especially that they don't see them all of a sudden blossom until they have a really great that year once they matured a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just hard because for those kids, when we talk about, mental toughness or mental health, it's also, that's a hard pill to swallow if some of these kids may never know what if.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What if it could be a big question they could have for a long time. Hopefully you don't live in that world, but it's once again, I'll just take it back, control what you control. I can't make the football season happen or cross country or volleyball, all those things, basketball, anything, coming up quickly.
And, some of the lucky ones have already got their scholarships secured for next year. What I found interesting is that a number of these guys that got their scholarships, offered to them and they took them so soon. Because a lot of times, but it makes sense because right now they don't have any games. And so that's the biggest part. What about the kid that maybe was a backup position player last year for a football team, and he worked so hard in the off season to get ready to play, and then he was going to have this, he would play great, and he would have this game film that college coaches could look at and say, look at this kid. Maybe we should keep following him and see how he does. They don't get that right now. So those are the ones that are especially going to fall through the cracks. The good news is the colleges know they're in this situation.
You're seeing at D1 right now is a lot of kids are committing early because they aren't going to have that senior film. So when they're coming through and getting those offers, they're saying, yep, I'm going to take it because I don't have any senior film to either move me up or slide me around the recruiting world out there. And so you're seeing that a little bit now. I would prefer not to be patient. I would take all the commits right now if it would make us be done in recruiting. But I think what you're going to see over time is that, these D1 schools are going to fill up. And I think we'll probably end up with our earliest committing class that we've ever had here because, again, without the senior film, they're going to want to, nail down a place to play and make sure that they have a home for next year. So I think we'll get our commits fairly early as well, but it's always going to be trickle down, right? Like it's going to be the Pac-12, kids are going to commit there, and then they're going to go into the Mountain West, and then they're going to go into the Big Sky, and then it's going to hit for us, and then it'll trickle on down after us. And so, we're just kind of waiting to see what happens at that Big Sky level with kids committing.